Chapter 251, The Never-Ending War. As the sun set, a bunch of memories started popping up in his mind. He analyzed all the memories and thought, good, all my clones have safely dispelled themselves. No one noticed them. Finally, it's time to begin my mission. 1 week ago. After eliminating the two groups of bounty hunters, Fujin split off from Kakashi's group and continued his journey forward. However, the fight had exhausted nearly half his chakra. So he decided to take a break in a nearby town. He entered the town after using the transformation jutsu and looked for an ordinary hotel. After renting a room, Fujin opened the scrolls Shikaku had handed him and began reading. The scrolls had a lot of details regarding the nobles in the Land of Wind. It contained a detailed list of all nobles, their families, friends, and their political standings. After a few hours, Fujin let out a sigh. He muttered in his mind, I used to think that the number of ninjas is quite high. But, until I joined the Umbu, I never ever imagined that the number of nobles would be this high. Every major country has at least a couple of thousand people related to the daimyo. Do they spend all their time breeding? And Shikaku's reports have over 500 nobles who he wants to be targeted. Sigh, when we talk about wars, everyone only thinks about the 3 great wars that have happened. Meanwhile, everyone is worried about when the 4th great ninja war will happen. But, in reality, the 5 major villages are at war with each other constantly with no breaks. It's just that these wars don't have a battlefield. Instead, they are fought by the special forces of each village. Instead of clashing openly, the war is about sabotaging others while increasing your own influence. In the last 12 months, I have basically been targeting nobles in the nearby smaller countries who are against Konoha. Like in the previous mission, we killed the forces of that noble from the Land of Waterfall who sided with IWA. The end result of such clashes is to make these nobles favor your village and hate the enemy's villages. And in this competition, Konoha has a huge advantage. Other than the Land of Rain, every neighboring country favors Konoha more than its other neighbors. The superiority of Hiruzen and Shikaku's scheming abilities can be seen through this. Of course, there is another big reason. Konoha has no ambition to claim the lands of other countries. But other countries want Konoha's lands. However, the smaller countries act as a buffer between them. If some country successfully manages to capture territory within the Land of Fire, the smaller countries acting as a buffer will also have to be conquered by them, or at least some parts of the country would have to be annexed. And if Konoha couldn't resist them, there's no way any smaller country could resist them. Fujin let out a sigh and thought, when I first read Naruto, I was disgusted by the fact that Kumo tried to kidnap a little girl. If kidnapped, her fate would have been terrible. Just the thought of it was revolting. But, now it doesn't seem very extreme. The chances of kidnapping someone from the Hyuga compounds should be close to 0. Perhaps the goal of that kidnapping attempt wasn't to kidnap Hinata but rather to have the kidnapper die in the Hyuga compounds. Perhaps, even if Hayashi didn't kill the kidnapper, as long as he was caught, he'd have committed suicide and died in the Hyuga clan compounds. This way, they would be able to exchange the life of a normal ninja with a strong clan leader. Even though Hayashi preserved his life, Konoha and the Hyuga clan lost an elite jounin. In peacetime, that is a great loss. I guess they also wanted to sow discord between the village leadership and the Hyuga clan. After all, by then, the Uchiha clan were already made to live on the outskirts of Konoha. If the 2 strongest clans were unsatisfied with the Konoha leadership, the village would become quite unstable. Even if nothing bad happened, as long as the process of recovery is slowed down, Konoha would be in trouble when the next Great War starts. Fujin let out another sigh. The more I get involved, the more I realize how deep the schemes run in this world. And, for some reason, I have a feeling that soon it will be my turn to play these schemes. If I can't, then I won't be able to achieve much in this life either. Fujin rested the night in that hotel before continuing his journey the next day. He crossed the border and entered the land of rivers under a random disguise. He found an unoccupied cave and entered it. He inscribed a few seals in the cave to provide some protection and to stop and misdirect any attempts of scouting that place. He quickly changed into the attire of Suna Umbu and thought, for the next few months, this will be my disguise while doing shady work. He left the cave and journeyed towards the land of wind. The border of the land of wind was as massive as that of the land of fire. However, unlike Konoha, they were suffering from a massive budget crunch. In addition, the desert conditions in the land of wind were many times rougher than the green forests in the land of fire. So very few patrolling teams used to patrol the borders. Fujin had no trouble infiltrating the land of wind. He continued moving rapidly across the vast deserts while thinking, though the rough environment makes patrolling difficult, the vast open desert makes hiding very difficult. After traveling a few hundred kilometers into the desert, Fujin took a break and began making a plan. He analyzed, most of my targets are in the wind capital. I will have to begin from there. But, how should I infiltrate it? Should I just sneak in? Fujin calculated his chances of sneaking in successfully. After some time, he rejected that idea. No. I have been to the fire capital a few times. Though the security wasn't as good as Konoha, it was still very tight. Samurais patrolled the walls and the walls themselves had numerous seals carved in them. Though I could still infiltrate without alarming any seal, it will be incredibly difficult. So, I guess my only option is to enter through the city gates. Suddenly, Fujin changed his direction. Instead of traveling towards the wind capital, Fujin began traveling towards the north. After traveling for another day, Fujin stopped and opened a map. He concluded, this should be the route where trading caravans pass through while trading between the land of wind and the land of earth. I'll just wait until I can catch a ride. He carved a seal on the sand and made a hand seal. The seal began sinking into the sand. He repeated the same process at distances of 25 meters dozens of times. Finally, he weaved another hand sign and placed his hand on the ground. Earth release, underground camp jutsu. He poured his chakra into the ground as the rocks and sand began moving. In a few minutes, one small underground room was formed. Fujin inscribed a seal on the wall of this room and thought, good. Now if anyone passes through this route, the seals will detect the vibrations in the ground and cause the seal to light up. I will wait here for up to a week. If no one shows up, then I will try to actively find a group of travelers instead of just sitting here. Fujin carved some seals to ensure that the room can't be sensed. He entered it and rested while waiting patiently. In the next 2 days, the seal lit up thrice. Fujin exited the room to observe each time. Unfortunately, all 3 groups were ninja squads from Suna. Luckily, none of them was sensing when Fujin exited the room. So his location stayed hidden. Finally, on the 3rd day, the seal lit up once again. Fujin sighed and muttered, if it is another group of ninjas, I will kill and impersonate them instead of traders or merchants. He exited the room. Chakra gathered in his eyes as he began observing the chakra signature while staying under the sand. A smile appeared on his face as he thought, finally. A group of 16 people. 12 have civilian levels of chakra while 4 have Chunin levels of chakra. He made a hand seal and his figure disappeared from under the sand. Suddenly, one of the four ninjas turned and looked at where Fujin was. The ninja next to him asked, "Did you notice something, Captain?" The captain replied, "It felt like a breeze suddenly passed through that area." "Leave it, I might be imagining it." They continued on their journey. After traveling for around 2 kilometers, one of the ninjas said, "Captain, there is someone ahead." The ninjas got alert. The captain said loudly, "Be careful everyone. It might be another bandit group." However, the ninja shook his head and said, "No, Captain. It is only one person and his chakra is very low. So he isn't a ninja." The group traveled forward carefully. After a couple of 100 meters, they saw the person. He was a man in terrible shape. His clothes were torn in multiple places and dyed in blood. He had multiple injuries on his body. He turned his head towards them and hope appeared in his eyes. Chapter 252, Test Subjects. The man immediately got up and walked towards the caravan. However, he was limping. The group noticed a deep cut just above his left knee. The man walked to them with tears running down his face and hurriedly begged, "Please help me. I am a trader just like you, but my caravan was attacked by desert bandits. All of us were captured. I luckily managed to escape, but they are still hunting for me. Please help." However, before he could finish speaking, a kick landed on his chest and sent him flying backwards. A look of shock appeared on the face of the man. He looked at them in disbelief. The four ninjas were wearing headbands that didn't belong to any ninja village. The caravan had a flag of the land of bird country. The man still begged, "Please help us and save my friends. If not, at least take me with you. I don't want to die here." One of the ninjas looked at him and asked, "What do we do with him, Captain?" The captain shook his head and said, "It's better to kill him. If he is planted by a bandit group, then we might get in trouble." Behind him, the leader of the traders, Hiroshi, said, "Just kill him and get moving. I don't want to delay my first trade." The injured man heard the words carefully. Fear showed on his face. One of the ninjas grinned and walked forward. "You heard him. You can say goodbye to your pathetic life." He grabbed a kunai and walked towards the man. The man looked at him with terror in his eyes. He raised the kunai and was about to attack when his head was sent flying into the air. The traders and the ninjas, who were looking at the spectacle with ridicule in their eyes, were suddenly shocked. Before they could even react, the heads of the remaining 3 ninjas were also sent flying. Terror flooded into the minds of each of the 12 traders as they saw the injured man behead the ninjas they hired for their safety. The injured man said in a cold tone, "You'd have died either way, but your actions avoid any feeling of guilt that I might have felt." He suddenly disappeared. Hiroshi saw as every trader began falling down to the ground one by one. Only he was left standing. The injured man, who was now a Shinigami in his eyes, stood in front of him and looked into his eyes. He couldn't move as the man's hands squeezed his neck. Suddenly, the entire world became pitch black. He couldn't even see the arm that was holding his neck. He heard Fujin speaking, "If you want to live, tell me every detail about yourself and your trading caravan." Hiroshi was completely terrified. He screamed, "I will speak. Please don't kill me." Hiroshi immediately gave him all the details that he wanted. He also took all the documents from Hiroshi. An electric current passed through Hiroshi's body and knocked him out. Fujin walked towards one of the knocked out traders and lifted him. A current passed through his body and woke him up. Fujin interrogated him to cross-check the information. He repeated the process with all 12 traders. After collecting all the data, Fujin analyzed, I was lucky. This is a perfect group for me to impersonate. It is their first mission, so they shouldn't have any contacts in the Wind Capital. Not to mention, they come from the land of Bird instead of the land of Earth. So their backing will be much weaker. In addition, the ninjas they hired don't work for any village. Instead, they work for the mercenary group Kurogen no Sensen. Though this mercenary group is quite influential, it mostly operates in the countries between the lands of Wind and Earth. It shouldn't have much sway here. And even if they do, they will be much slower than a ninja village to investigate their missing ninjas. Fujin observed everyone around him and thought, it'd be a huge waste to just hide their bodies. He walked towards one of the detached heads and extended his right hand towards it while thinking, it should work against detached heads too. Though I am not sure if using them for my first try is a good thing. Yin chakra appeared on his palm and poured into the detached head. Fujin controlled the chakra to gently enter the brain. He closed his eyes to properly control the chakra. As chakras surged unhindered, a profound strain befell the brain. The delicate neural pathways, unaccustomed to such a surge, begin to falter and distort under immense pressure. Fujin frowned. He stopped pouring the chakra into his mind and wondered, how the fuck do the Yamanakas train? Despite my chakra control, the brain was destroyed so easily. And, I didn't even see a single memory. Do the Yamanaka have secret methods of learning? Or do they test on test subjects before being allowed to use it on alive people? Fujin fell in a thought, as I expected, this is very complicated. Though I know that it requires yin chakra, just that isn't enough to learn this jutsu. If I am right, several generations of Yamanaka clan ninjas probably worked on this to create the secret technique. So I am basically trying to replicate a decades-long process without much information. Right now, I have only two pieces of knowledge. The first is that the chakra has to be pure yin and the chakra control has to be very good. The second is that memories aren't stored in just one single part of the brain. They are distributed across multiple brain regions and involve intricate neural networks and connections rather than being confined to a single location. Unfortunately, I have no idea which those regions are. The library didn't have any information regarding this. I am sure my previous world had better information about this. Unfortunately, I hadn't studied biology for years. I simply don't have any memories regarding this. Fujin analyzed for a few minutes before sighing, leave it. I can't think of anything good. I will just experiment on them. Fujin experimented on the three detached heads. The first two had their brains destroyed. On the last one, his chakra control with the yin chakra became much better. He managed to continue invading his brain with yin chakra without turning it into mush. However, he didn't get any memories from it. Fujin wondered, do I need to make more modifications to my yin chakra or move it in a certain way to read memories? He couldn't say for sure. He looked towards the 12 unconscious traders and muttered, I hope I have luck with living test subjects. He walked towards one trader, tied his limbs and woke him up. The trader woke up terrified. He shouted and begged, but Fujin didn't pay any attention to him. He placed a hand on his head and began inserting yin chakra into his head. He delicately controlled his chakra to enter his brain and access the neural networks in his cerebral cortex. However, the man suddenly yelled. Soon, his expression changed. He spoke gibberish and he began making weird faces. Fujin looked at him with a solemn expression, he has become intellectually impaired. Another reason why I should never let anyone try to read my memories. If they wish to harm me, I won't even be able to resist. Fujin continued trying to read his memories until his brain was destroyed and he stopped moving and dropped dead. Fujin experimented on the remaining 11 traders and all faced the same result. Fujin sighed and began storing everyone's dead bodies in scrolls. He stored the 4 dead ninjas in one scroll and the 12 dead traders in another. He placed the scroll of the dead ninjas in the underground room he had created and completely sealed it up. He analyzed, if the mercenary group had any means of tracking them, they would be led here. Even if they find the blood where I killed them, they will only find the blood of these 4 ninjas. Fujin walked back to the caravan and created shadow clones. They transformed into the 11 traders while Fujin transformed into Hiroshi. They buried the sand dyed in blood a few meters below the surface and began their journey to the Wind Capital. Mid-route, Fujin made another shadow clone who traveled a few kilometers and buried the scroll with the dead bodies of the traders deep within the sand. In these vast deserts, the chances of it being found were negligible. Chapter 253, Assassination. Fujin was enjoying his evening breakfast on his balcony while enjoying the beautiful sunset. He thought, this lifestyle is kinda good. I see why so many ninjas want to be recruited by a daimyo. Unlike the daily life of going through deadly missions and not knowing whether you'd live or not, the life here is just too relaxing and stress-free. Fujin had stayed in the Wind Capital for a couple of weeks. He spent it relaxing in his luxurious hotel room and sightseeing around the city. He analyzed, there hadn't been any news about anyone looking for Hiroshi or the ninjas protecting them. So I should be able to maintain this identity for some time. He turned his eyes towards a few mansions in the city. They were quite far from his location but still visible. Though he couldn't see every detail, he knew that a few were moving sneakily into those mansions. Just like Fujin, one noble was enjoying his life in one of the mansions Fujin eyed. He was enjoying his luxurious life while thinking, I am so glad that the daimyo decided to favor Konoha instead of Suna. Otherwise, there is no way I would be able to sign such a huge deal with the Kazekage. Once the deal is finalized, money will start rolling into this mansion. Ha ha ha. At that moment, a maid entered the room. She was in her teens and looked very beautiful. The noble, who was in his 50s, lecherously eyed her. She brought a tray filled with various sushi to him and said respectfully, "My lord." The noble looked at it and said, "It looks delicious." He turned his eyes towards her and said, "I am sure it tastes even better if you feed it to me." He opened his mouth wide open. The maid knew about how perverted he was. Unfortunately, she had no other option. She picked up a piece of sushi and was about to feed him when she saw a red line appearing on his throat. Before she could think, the line split open and blood sprayed out and covered the maid's face and chest. She freaked out and screamed loudly. Immediately, a samurai appeared in the room and asked, "Lord Atsushi, what happened?" His words were stuck in his mouth as he saw the noble he was supposed to protect lying in his chair with his throat cut open with the maid standing in shock in front of him. He got angry and muttered, "Someone dared to kill a person protected by me? They are disrespecting the great name of Isamu. I will kill them." He quickly approached the maid and asked her menacingly, "Did you kill him?" The maid was terrified by his expression. She feared the worst. Unfortunately, there wasn't much she could do. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she said, "No, I didn't do it. I was about to feed him when a red line appeared on his neck and split it open." Isamu believed her. He thought, she isn't lying. It looks like the work of a ninja. A wind user to be specific. Did he upset Suna during the negotiations? Or is someone trying to frame Suna? Chakra gathered in his eyes as he began to observe everything in the mansion. Suddenly he discovered, since when did someone with so much chakra appear in the mansion? He must be the culprit. Chakra flowed through his sword as he stabbed it into the floor. A hole appeared in the floor and he jumped on the floor below. In front of him was a butler. Isamu looked at him and said, "Good disguise. If it was someone else, they'd be fooled." A frown formed on the face of the butler. He asked, "What do you mean?" However, instead of replying, Isamu swung his sword. A blue sword wave was shot from his sword and approached the butler. The butler immediately moved out of the way, displaying physical skills far beyond what a civilian could display. The samurai moved forward and attacked him with his sword once again. The butler took a kunao and used it to block the sword. Unlike Isamu, he didn't use chakra flow. However, since Isamu's chakra flow wasn't charged with wind nature, his kunao could hold on. However, Isamu used the opportunity to kick his chest. The butler was sent flying backwards and crashed into a wall. His transformation jutsu was dispelled. Isamu saw a ninja wearing a scorpion mask and in the umbu uniform of Tsunagakuer. His expression became grim. It looked like he was caught in an internal struggle in the land of wind. The ninja got up and said in a cold tone, "I didn't expect you to be so good. However, you should have just looked the other way. Now, I will have to kill you as well." Isamu didn't attack and asked, "Why did you kill him?" The ninja snorted, "Do you think it is so easy to take advantage of our village? Even your land of iron doesn't have the same standing as our village. Let alone some no-name noble." He raised two fingers. Wind began flowing around them. Isamu once again attacked with his sword. However, the umbu easily dodged the sword slash. Isamu's eyes widened as 4 cuts appeared on each of his arms. 2 of them were right on his elbow and severed his blood vessels and nerves in it. Isamu suddenly felt weak and dropped his swords. The umbu said, "In your next life, don't poke your head into other people's businesses." Wind once again began moving around his 2 fingers as he pointed them towards the samurai. Though Isamu was wearing armor, a lot of areas on his body weren't protected by it. Dozens of cuts appeared on his legs and neck. Isamu dropped to the ground and lost consciousness. He was no match for the umbu. Having completed his job, the umbu disappeared. After the fighting noises stopped, the servants immediately ran towards where the fighting was happening. To their horror, they noticed Isamu lying in a pool of blood. They immediately ran forward and checked on him. Surprisingly, one maid said, "He is still breathing. Call for doctors. Also, inform Lord Atsushi about this." Some servants left hurriedly to call for the personal doctor employed in the mansion. A couple of other servants ran to the upper floor. They were horrified to see that their Lord Atsushi was dead and the maid was lying unconscious. They carried the maid down to be in the same room as Isamu. After laying her down, they went to the basement to inform the family of the noble who had hidden there immediately after hearing the sounds of a battle. The doctor soon arrived. His expression became grim after checking the samurai. He said, "His condition is very bad. Go and call for a medical ninja from the hospital. Hurry." A couple of servants nodded and left. The doctor removed Isamu's armor and clothes around the cuts. He provided first aid and stopped the bleeding. Suddenly, loud wailing was heard from the floor above. The family members of the noble were crying due to his loss. After a couple of minutes, his son walked down and saw the doctor treating Isamu while his father was completely ignored. He shouted, "How dare you treat others when my father has died?" Leave them to die along with him. His expression became cruel as he said, in fact, all of you should join him too. Fear appeared on the face of all servants. However, the doctor was calm. He continued cleaning the wounds and said without looking at him, "Young master, he is a samurai from the land of iron. A proper explanation has to be given every time a samurai dies. If the land of iron finds out that a samurai died because you didn't allow him to be treated, you and your whole family might have to join your father. Even Lord Daimyo won't do anything to save you." His words caused the young master to be covered in sweat. He gritted his teeth and said, "I will remember this." He quickly left the room and walked back towards his father. The doctor let out a sigh. He thought, "I have completely offended him. Oh well, if I didn't, he'd have killed me anyway. As long as I save Isamu, I will be safe." Soon all the bleeding stopped. The doctor began the blood transfusion to stabilize his condition. He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "He will be fine." His words caused relief to spread among the servants in the mansion. The doctor turned his attention towards the maid and inspected her. Soon he got up and said, "She has just lost consciousness due to being terrified. She will be fine." The servants tended to both of them while waiting for the medical ninja to arrive. In around an hour, a medical ninja arrived. The doctor exchanged a few words with him and he began inspecting Isamu. He nodded his head and said, "You have done a great job." He waved a few hand signs and extended his palms towards Isamu. Mystical Palm Jutsu. The chapter name of the latest chapter on Patreon, killing Tsuchikage with one hand tied behind the back. Chapter 254, Framing Tsunagakuer. Chakra poured from the medical ninja's hands. One by one, he completely healed every cut on Isamu's body. Only some scars were left behind. Soon, Isamu woke up. The memories of nearly dying returned to his mind. He sat straight and began sweating profusely due to fear. The medical ninja noticed his condition and placed his hand on his shoulder and said, "Don't worry, you are all right. Do you recall what happened?" His words snapped Isamu out of his shock. He looked down at his body and thought, "I thought I was dead for sure. The enemy was much stronger than me. I was no match. Did he assume that I was dead and left in a hurry?" He turned his eyes towards the medical ninja and became scared once again. He thought, first Asuna Umbu almost kills me and then Asuna medical ninja saves me. What the heck are these guys playing at? The medical ninja saw the fear in Isamu's eyes and frowned. It felt as if Isamu was afraid of him. He asked, "Who injured you?" Having just gotten another chance to live, Isamu didn't wish to risk it again. He replied, "I can't say as I didn't see his face. I need to make a report to Lord Daimyo. After all, he killed the noble I was assigned to protect." At the same time, a doubt appeared in his mind, the ninja who attacked me was very well versed in wind jutsus. He was a natural at it. But, could it be that someone from another village was impersonating to frame Suna? I was certain that he was from Suna. The only flaw is that he left me alive. After all, it wouldn't make much sense for him to not ensure that I am dead. The only way he would profit is if he is an enemy of Suna and the blame falls on Tsunagakuer entirely. He thought a lot but couldn't come up with a definite answer. He decided, leave it. I will report the event as it is to the daimyo. I will let daimyo make the decision. He was about to get up when the doctor softly said, "Lord, we need your help." Isamu squinted his eyes and looked at him. The doctor informed the actions of the young master. Anger appeared in Isamu's eyes. However, he couldn't take action directly. He said loudly, "Anyone who wants to leave this mansion, can do so along with me. I will ask Lord Daimyo to ensure that you don't suffer injustice." Smiles and relief appeared on everyone's faces. They were about to leave the mansion when another samurai appeared in front of them. Isamu noticed him and quickly bowed down, "Lord Hajime." Hajime was in charge of all samurais in the Wind Capital. He was also the strongest samurai in the Wind Capital. Hajime nodded and said, "I received a report that Noble Atsushi was assassinated. Is it true, Isamu?" Isamu nodded, "Yes. I am ashamed." Hajime said, "I trust that you gave your all, Isamu. So give me the exact details of what happened." Isamu didn't want to speak in front of everyone. He said, "This. Lord Hajime, can we speak in private?" Hajime nodded. Both walked into one of the many rooms in the mansion. Hajime said, "Speak." Isamu quickly reported the details of his clash along with his analysis. He ended by saying, "All evidence points towards Tsunagakure. However, I still have a nagging suspicion that something else might be happening." Hajime nodded and said, "Good analysis. I might have sided with you if not for other events that have happened the same time you fought." Isamu furrowed his eyebrows. Hajime continued, "Atsushi wasn't the only noble who was targeted. 9 others were killed at the same time. In 3 cases, the culprits were able to escape undetected. Including you, 7 samurais fought them. Unfortunately, 5 are already dead. Apart from you, only 1 is alive. But his condition is critical." Isamu's eyes widened. His back became covered in sweat. He muttered, "I was lucky that he didn't check whether I was alive or dead." Hajime nodded. He added, "Everyone was injured with blades made of wind. This is a rather commonly used technique among the jounins of Tsunagakure. Though other villages could replicate it, sending 10 expert wind users on the same mission is quite unlikely. Regardless, Daimyo is pissed at Tsunagakure. Our country might also take some actions to avenge the death of our 5 comrades." Isamu had a bitter expression. He said, "Everyone can see that the daimyo has been upset with them since the time they lost in the Third Great Ninja War. We were unfortunately the ones to be caught in between them." Hajime agreed and said, "Yes. But, we can't take any decision regarding this. I have to meet with daimyo. You take care of your health." He was about to leave when Isamu stopped him and informed him about the actions of Atsushi's son. Hajime frowned and said, "Leave the mansion and take everyone with you. I'll ask daimyo to take appropriate actions for them. A family that treats people like this will fall no matter how rich or influential they are." He left the mansion. Following him, Isamu and every commoner employed in the mansion left, only leaving Atsushi's stunned family in the mansion. Back in the hotel, Fujin received the memories of his 10 clones. He analyzed, everything went as planned. Now it's time to be patient. Throughout the night, samurais kept moving around the city. The security had become very tight. Many sudden inspections were being carried out. However, Fujin wasn't affected. It wasn't surprising as the number of civilians far exceeded the number of samurais and ninjas working under the Wind Daimyo. He did sense numerous chakra fields covering him. However, no one detected anything strange about him. These acts made the city quite tense. The next morning, 2 pieces of information spread through the city. The first one caused panic and restlessness among the civilian population. After all, 10 nobles were murdered in broad daylight. If nobles who were protected by samurais weren't safe, then how could common people feel safe? However, the second news made everyone feel peculiar and amused them. Rumors floated in the city that a noble's family threatened to execute all servants. So everyone serving that family quit and left the mansion. The daimyo himself had given assurances that these people wouldn't be harmed. In addition, no new workers signed up to serve that family due to the bad reputation it gained, making them a joke in the Wind capital. As the culprit behind the assassinations, Fujin was sitting relaxed in his room. He analyzed, these 10 were all very close to Tsunagaku according to the scrolls. Now that they are dead and Suna is the first suspect, their families will stop relying on Suna. Since the land of wind and fire are allied, Konoha will become their new reliance soon. Even if they don't ally with Konoha and continue the same level of interaction with Suna, it isn't actually our loss as just the status quo is maintained. In addition, the daimyo and remaining nobles will now be very alert against Tsunagaku. Though they can't pin the blame on Suna, seeds of doubt will take root in their minds. Of course, just this isn't enough. I'll have to keep providing water to these seeds to create the required effect. Numerous plans and schemes kept running through Fujin's mind. For quite some time, the Wind capital was fated to remain restless. Chapter 255, Tsunagaku makes a move. Tsunagaku, Kaze Cage Building. A ninja was hurrying inside the Kaze Cage building. Without waiting to knock and get permission, he opened the door and said loudly, "Lord Raza, we have an important matter." Raza frowned. He was in a meeting. He looked at them and said, "We will continue the talks later." Everyone nodded and left the meeting. Raza looked with annoyance and asked, "What is the rush? Didn't you know that I was in an important meeting?" The ninja replied, "I am sorry but this is important, Lord Raza. 10 nobles in the Wind capital have died. 5 samurais have also died. And we are the prime suspect." Raza frowned and asked, "What did you say?" The ninja handed him a scroll. Raza opened and began reading. The ninja said, "It is suspected that all were killed using the blade of wind jutsu. And since all 10 murders happened at the same time, they don't think any other village could have done this." Raza's expression became grim. He thought, Wind Daimyo's support for us has been decreasing continuously since the end of the Third War. I had just managed to stabilize our standing and was about to pull out of the alliance with Konoha, but this happened. It will push the daimyo even further away from us. His mood worsened as he cursed, "Which bastard is scheming against me? Kiri shouldn't be involved in this. So it should be either Hiruzen or Onaki. But which one?" He kept analyzing. The important matter is that 10 ninjas simultaneously used Blade of Wind Jutsu. Is one of them building a specialist unit of wind? Raza thought for a bit and concluded, "No, Blade of Wind is a Jounin level jutsu. I doubt any of them would be willing to send 10 of them here. The most likely possibility is that Wind Sword Jutsu was used. Gathering 10 users of that jutsu wouldn't be difficult for Konoha or IWA. Among the 2 of them, Konoha is the most suspicious. If their number of wind users increases, their destructiveness on the battlefield will go up a few notches. But, for Hiruzen to do this, did he discover my attempts to break the alliance? If so, this wouldn't be his only move." Raza's analysis was on point. Fujin's clones had all used Wind Sword Jutsu to kill or injure their targets. However, Raza still didn't consider the point of someone using shadow clones. So he overestimated the number of attackers by a factor of 10. He looked at the ninja in front of him and said, "Call Baki here." The ninja nodded and left. In a few minutes, Beiki arrived. Raza tossed the scroll over to him and said, "Read." Beiki nodded and began reading. His expression became grim. Raza said, "I want you to lead a squad of 20 ninjas to the Wind Capital. Find who the culprit is and clear our name. If you can't find the culprit, then stay there and ensure that no more incidents occur. At the same time, make sure that our reputation among the nobles in the Wind Capital improves. I suspect that Konoha is behind this incident, but we can't rule out Iwagakure either. They may want us to suspect Konoha and break our alliance. So be on guard against both of them." Beiki nodded, "Yes, Lord Kazekage." He immediately left and began preparations to leave. In a couple of hours, Beiki along with 19 ninjas at the rank of Chunin and above left towards the Wind Capital. Wind Capital. Fujin was still staying in the same hotel. Due to being one of the most luxurious hotels in the Wind Capital, the impact of the stricter security and frequent checks wasn't felt much there. However, a samurai still visited to ask him some standard questions before leaving without suspecting anything. Fujin didn't make any moves in these 2 days. He thought, though I could still kill some targets irrespective of how much security the samurais provide, it won't help my mission. On one hand, the daimyo will begin considering why Suna is attacking despite being the prime suspect. So their suspicion of Suna will decrease instead of increase. On the other hand, if I overdo it, daimyo and the other nobles might get terrified of Suna. They might stop increasing relations with Konoha and obediently support Suna. I am sure Raza might just go ahead and begin killing the nobles himself as well until the daimyo capitulates, taking full opportunity of my blunder. So my best course of action is to keep striking at regular intervals. Fujin's attention was suddenly attracted. He got up and went to the balcony and looked at one of the entrances to the city. Though he wasn't actively sensing, he could feel that a group of ninjas with strong chakras were coming towards the city. He wondered, did Raza send a few ninjas? A smile appeared on his face. He thought, good, I was getting bored. Though this mission is quite relaxing, I don't want to do it much longer. After all, I can't train at all while staying here. The longer I stay here, the more time I will be wasting. Unfortunately, this mission requires me to stay here for around 6 months. But, if I can do a great job, I'll be able to leave early. Not to mention, this city doesn't deserve its name. Wind Capital my ass. I have sent dozens of clones to find and steal any wind crystals here. Unfortunately, they have none. I had planned to steal the entire treasury of it, but I never thought they won't have a single one. What a waste. Fujin sighed and eliminated that thought. He had felt enough heartache over the last week due to this matter. He turned his attention towards the Suna ninjas and waited in anticipation for them to arrive. A few minutes later, Beiki and his group entered the Wind Capital. His arrival immediately gained everyone's attention. Due to the incidents and the rumors, the common people were quite afraid of them. Even the samurais and other guards were alert against them. The moods of Suna ninjas became grim on seeing how much the public perception was against them. Seeing the circumstances, they immediately traveled towards the daimyo's estate. However, the entrance of the daimyo's estate was guarded by a dozen samurais led by Hajime. Beiki greeted with a smile, "Hajime-san, it's good to meet you again. I am here to deliver a message from Lord Kazekage to Lord Daimyo." Hajime replied with a smile as well, "It is good to see you as well, Beiki. I would have loved to escort you in. Unfortunately, Lord Daimyo is busy with important meetings due to recent events and has asked to not be disturbed." I'll have to politely ask you to wait here until he allows for visitors. Beki and the Suna ninjas frowned. The daimyo was trying to humiliate them. Beki said, "All right, I will wait here until Lord Daimyo sends a message." The Suna ninjas following Beki knew of the circumstances, so none spoke anything despite the blatant disrespect. Beki analyzed, "A power play. The daimyo intends to show his displeasure by making us wait here. The longer we are made to wait, the more he is displeased. Still, he is also disrespecting our Kazekage." Beki looked at the ninjas behind him. They had run non-stop from Sunagakure to Wind Capital. He said, "You guys can leave and have some rest. I will meet up after meeting Lord Daimyo." The ninjas nodded and left. Hajime was surprised. He analyzed, letting the ninjas leave signifies that he isn't here to fight. However, on the other hand, it also could be seen as an insult to the daimyo as he isn't making his subordinates wait patiently for the daimyo. Oh well, it is none of my business whether he worships or disrespects the daimyo as long as he doesn't attack. Beki and the rest had arrived in the Wind Capital in the morning. However, despite the sun being right on top of their heads, the daimyo still hadn't called Beki in. He kept waiting outside daimyo's estate until the sun began setting. Finally, when the sun was about to set, a messenger came out of the estate and whispered a message to Hajime. Hajime looked at Beki and said, "Lord Daimyo is finally done with his meetings. You can meet him now, Beki." Beki's mood was terrible. He was made to wait outside for nearly half a day. They didn't even bother providing him with any food, water, or even a chair. He walked in thinking, "What a terrible mission I accepted. Razasama should have sent a diplomat along with me."